Hey everyone, just wanted to start this episode a little bit differently than I normally do. Just wanted to give a big thank you to Aaron Clooney and Starline Publishing for just helping me actually make this episode and helping me find a group and just being really supportive on Twitter. I just also would like to preface this with those Starline Publishing and Aaron Clooney did not create Maid. They are actually the translators for it. So please, please, please. Whether you like this book or not, support what they do. They currently have a Kickstarter out for Golden Sky Stories. If you're listening to this past when that Kickstarter is closed, buy one of their other books. They're good. That looks like what they do is translate books from Japanese to English. So without them working on these kind of things, these kinds of games wouldn't exist. And also, I'd like to give a big thank you to the Looking for Group subreddit on Reddit for helping me find players as well to actually do a playtest of the game. Yeah, this episode, we're actually going to be reviewing Maid the RPG. So, let's get started.
Please listen carefully.
So what is Maid? Maid is a Japanese pen and paper RPG written by Ryo Kiyama. It looks like it was created around 2004, but it wasn't actually translated into English and published in the United States until 2014. It actually spans 3 books total, the first one being called Maid, and then there are 2 other expansions for the book as well. What Aaron Clooney actually did is translated... Not only did he translate all 3 books, but he also cut and rearranged them so that they make sense when you read them in English, in just like the right order. So when you buy this one book, you get the other 2, but he'll kind of change around some of the mechanics. That way, if something's mentioned later, it makes sense. So he's not only has he translated this entire book, he is reorganized all 3 books to make sense to an English reader, which I think is quite a feat. I was impressed with just reading that in the preface. And another thing about this game and the preface, the way that it's written, the way the entire game is written, it's written from, it looks like, Aaron Clooney's point of view. It reads as if it's being translated from someone reading it as well, which I actually like. It actually prefaces the book as being silly. I think the opening in there actually states, if you're really choosing to play this game, more power to you, but here's some things you need to know. And just because it is a really silly, really out there title, it plays way different from any other RPG I've ever seen. And that can be good or bad depending on your style. So, as the name implies, the player characters, they play as anime style maids. That means for those of you not familiar with anime or like who don't watch a lot of anime, you're going to be very cutesy. You're going to have lots of like anime type tropes. So if you usually you're looking online for like different kinds of anime tropes, different way that like anime girls act. That really exemplifies this game. A maid's job is to take care of an NPC known as the Master, who is controlled by the game master at the time. So the GM actually controls the Master and has the maids do different kind of chores around the house, as well as the maids usually have to do some kind of task for the Master that spans across the single session. And that is the other thing is the game can be played multiple ways. It can either be done as a long overarching campaign, or like the Dungeons and Dragons, or it can be ran like is one shots Shadowrun style, which is a one shot is going to mean that you can play beginning to end in like 2 to 3 hours. You can do the entire you get an entire story worth of playtime. So you find, you do the whole hero's journey in one sit down. However, Maid, it couldn't be further from both of these games. It is nothing like Dungeons and Dragons, and it's the similarities between this and Shadowrun end with the fact that they can be played as one shots. Yeah, normally when you play, the game takes place over the course of a week or so, in game time. So it can take place in any setting as well. Modern day mansions, starships, cruise ships, fantasy castles. It actually has rules for playing in any setting that you like. Preferably, the best way to play this game, I think, is just to play it like as intended, like Japanese style, like type mansion. Doing a one shot campaign or running multiple one shots if you're so bold as to play this more than once. So each turn in the game, first off, there's no sort of initiative in this game. So each turn you kind of just go in an arbitrary order, and you kind of just ask like what each maid is doing for the day. Usually there are chores that are tasked that you'd write up each day that the maids would need to do, or different chores that they would need to rotate around the house. That'd be like cooking dinner for the master, bathing the master, taking care of the master because he's sick, having tea time with the master. And some of these may be goals that multiple maids have to do. And we'll get in a little bit about why it's important to do these as we kind of explain the game system a little later on here. But usually at the end of this week, there's some kind of big event that's happening around the master, either in secret, where the maids are trying to set up like a party for him, or discover something for him, or something like that, or some sort of big event like terrorist attack, or aliens kidnap the master and you have to get him back, or ninjas attack. Like something nuts happens at the end of the week. For example, the scenario that I played through was called Happy Birthday. I was playing the GM who was controlling the master, who was a middle school kid who was all alone in the master with his, in this case, 3 maids. The maid's job was to meet up with the master and do an actual like group chore with him, while the others would go out and buy presents, buy things for the cake, design the party. I think they ended up calling like a band to perform and things like that, all throughout the week. So every day they had time to do like 1 or 2 things throughout the day. So usually you don't get, it's kind of like an overarching type campaign that you play. So you do a lot of big moves, and there's some rolling. It's not in the traditional sense of like there are no movement rules. It's very open-ended on what you can do. You can pretty much do anything in terms of like you don't have money, so you can buy whatever because your master's super rich. In pretty much all scenarios, you can call whoever. There's no real rules for any of that. The character creation for the game, it's entirely random, and it runs on just a D6 system. So a 6-sided dice is all you'll need. The player characters roll a D6 for their appearances, their stats, which that's going to cover things like their athletic skill, their cunning, their affection, as well as if you are like boyish or childlike. It's also going to determine your hair color, your eye color, all random whenever you start. Alternatively, you can have players pick, but the way that the book is written, it doesn't look like you're supposed to. It's supposed to be entirely random every time that you play. After you kind of choose the way you look and like your body style too, which again, it's random. You can end up being like a lolly, which is like very in the book it describes lolly as very childlike, but you could also be a child. It's going to be things like boyish, heroine, just determining like, and that actually affects your stats. So that's all going to be done on a D6. After that is where things kind of get weird or weirder. So the book after that starts using a D66 and D666 system, what that is, it's actually a lot simpler than it sounds. It's not a 66-sided dice, and it's not a 666-sided dice. You're going to roll either 2 6-sided dice, and one will be the high number value, and one will be the low number value. So if I roll 2 d6s, my first one is a 1, my second one is a 6. Therefore, my number is 16. It's just like the d10 system that I've described previously. For the D666, same thing. It's just 3 6-sided dice. And the lowest number you can roll is either going to be 11 or 111. And obviously the max is going to be 66 or 666. And it's got whole tables built out for rolling on these. Rolling those are really going to determine your... it's really going to determine your like character qualities for the D66. When you roll D66, it's going to determine... if you're like a cat girl or actually a boy or a robot or you wear glasses. Like, it can be anything in between. The D666 isn't really used until the expansions, when they start adding in like magic items and things like that. I've read through the entire book, but when I played, I only used the base game just to get a general understanding. But more or less, you can throw anything from the expansions in whenever you'd like. But I'll talk about more about what's in the expansions toward the end. So the reason that, from what I could find, the reason that they use a D66 system or D666 system is it just looks like in some areas of Japan, even today, it's hard to get a polyhedral dice set unless you order it online. For like a lot of the cities, that's obviously something you can find nowadays, just with the way everything moves around. But just kind of out in the more rural areas, it's got to be online. Well, this was made back in 2003, so that wasn't really an option. So we have this D66 system. It's really smart for considering what they had around 2003, 2004 in terms of just dice systems. They're just using D6s. I don't think I've seen another system that uses D66s and D666s. But like everyone has those dice, so it makes sense for them to use that if it's a Japanese book. Nowadays, it's kind of it'd be considered kind of archaic, but overcomplicated, too complicated. It would be considered too complicated. So, in addition to the randomized stats and appearances, players are also going to have personal qualities and special powers and weapons if applicable. The scenario we played did not require weapons, so my players did not get weapons. But, again, if you do, it's all randomized. All your powers are randomized. If you have any, usually have some kind of maid power, which would be things like super strength or, it may not even be that bold. I think one of my guys got mutants. Like, he's just a mutant, or he's mutated, so, and finally, lastly, all players are playing as females in the game. All maids are female, unless you roll the quality that says that you are a male posing as a female, but again, you should still be role-playing as a female character when you play this game. Later editions add rules for butlers and headmaids as a thing, but I believe for looking over those, there should mostly be non-player characters who are just like in addition to the master. So yes, you should be role playing a female when you're playing this game. If you're not, you're doing it wrong, period. It kind of ruins the whole anime-esque appeal to it. And yeah, personally having a guy in there, it's already weird playing it. It's already but throwing a guy in that mix makes it even more awkward. But again, the way the book's written should only be girls. You're making a character, you're a girl. Deal with it. So another interesting thing about this game is that the maids do not have health. You cannot die in the Maid RPG. And I don't mean that in like a Call of Cthulhu sense where there are things worse than death. No, you just can't die because it's not that kind of game. It's an anime. Everybody's supposed to have fun. It's supposed to be silly. What you do have is when you take damage or you fail any sort of skill check, you take stress. And each character has its own maximum stress based on their stats. And when they hit that, they do something that is called a stress explosion, which will usually have you do crazy things like break everything around you or run away, or it's actually, again, random for your stress explosion. So you roll on a table and see what kind of stress explosion you get. This is important, and the stress system is important because the second part of this game is favor. And what favors are like points, I guess. I was gonna say it's like inspiration, but it's not really like inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons. So whenever you succeed a skill check, or you succeed, or not any skill check, anytime you do something for the master, anything to benefit him, like your chores, you cook successfully, you earn favor. And what favor lets you do is favor lets you raise your stats, remove stress, add bonuses to your rolls, and trigger random events, which random events can end up taking away a lot of favor if they're negative, or giving someone a lot of favor if they're positive. The only thing is, if you lose all of your favor, you are fired. You can recover from being fired by permanently lowering one of your stats to gain extra favor. Yeah, if you run out of favor, you're done. And on top of that, if you have the most favor, you win the game. That's right, folks. We are dealing with a pen and paper RPG that declares a winner at the end of every session. Highest favor wins the game. If you're playing multiple sessions, that player will become the head maid and actually get bonuses to their rolls for the next session that they're in. Finally, the only other thing I have to talk about in terms of the system is the combat system. So the whole game is based around kind of, screwing each other over in order to gain favor and make other players lose favor. But you're supposed to do this in a playful manner. You don't go around punching your teammates in the face, because, again, ultimately you are working together. But you may try to say something to embarrass them in front of the master. You may, tease them by taking something away from them and holding it over their head, or splashing them while you guys are like taking a bath. So this is ways you can add stress, and also gives you opportunities to take away favor from the other players, which is ultimately your goal, while role playing towards a common goal of setting something up for the master as well. So you all, like, for example, for the birthday, you all need to get presents, you all need to bake the cake, you all need to set the party. But that doesn't mean you can't mess with each other along the way to try and mess up the other players. So you're working against each other while still moving towards a common goal. The versus system. This is probably my biggest gripe with the game, is it's so much more unnecessary than it needs to be. In order to do a versus check, you roll 1 6-sided dice, you multiply that by the stat that you're using. So if we're using like athletics, and that's like a 2, and let's say you rolled a 4, so that would make the total an 8, and you roll that against the other person, whatever they're using. So if they're using athletics and they have a 1 in athletics, they roll a 4. Obviously, the 8 wins, but you now need to divide the 8 total by the stat value of the other person. So you would take 8 divided by 1, and they would take 8 points of stress. Yeah. It can become kind of cumbersome, especially if you're playing a long game where the players start getting lots of favor and start increasing their stats. Luckily, that didn't happen with me. But if you are playing a long game, eventually your stats are going to be so unbelievably high. And I mean, high in Maid for a stat is like 3. Like 3 is really good. Any higher than that, and you're amazing. So, the longer the game goes on, the worse it's gonna be to play. I mean, I guess you could adjust the rules because they have tables for difficulty. I guess you could adjust the difficulty table, but that kind of then what's the point of increasing stats if you're just gonna if you're just gonna raise the bar higher when you want to do something? I don't get it. I don't like it. Oh, don't play a long game of Maid. I don't. That's the one part where this whole thing starts to kind of fall apart. Is that like once you keep, the longer you play, the easier it's gonna be just for the maids, and the more math you're gonna have to do just to get damage. So if you play it as just like a one shot thing where you play one shot at a time and then roll up new maids, or maybe two or three, any more than that, and it's just gonna be an exercise in futility for any GM. It's just they're gonna get so strong. They're gonna get so strong. What happens when everybody has like 4 or 5 in every stat? You roll a d6, multiply it by, it's like 30 points, and then your stress threshold is, it's only like 40 or 50. I mean, I guess when your stats higher, it can be a little higher, but I mean, again, it's a silly game, so it's not supposed to be played over. I mean, I don't think it's supposed to be played over a long period of time, like a multi-session super campaign. It'd be an interesting experiment to see how it goes. If anyone wants to play Maid for that long, I'm not gonna play, but you can and report back. Yeah, that'd be interesting. But finally, I just want to go over like the alternate rules. Kind of just gloss over those a bit and read a bit into them, just because most of the expansions are just tables of like extra stuff you can add in. So there's like little nuggets of like the rules hidden throughout these huge selection of tables. Headmaid, which we've kind of already talked about. You can either assign that to a player and give them a bonus, or make a whole new character that is the headmaid, and then have just more shenanigans where they have to kind of mess with the headmaid. The rule I didn't talk about that a lot of games actually do use, and I would actually recommend using it, especially if you're playing your second or third game, is seduction. What seduction is going to be is you can use like your appearance stat to seduce other players, and then instead of them working for the master, they work towards your goals until they can seduce out of it, or I think it might be a will check out of it. So that actually is a system. I was watching some live plays go through it as well, and a lot of them actually did implement the seduction system. Makes the game a million times more awkward than it already is, because you now have players hitting on each other very overtly, because it's like anime style, but you already knew what you signed up for when you opened up Maid, so I don't feel bad. You should know better. Magic items are things you can add into the game. Really weird stuff like magic lamps are in there, things like magazines and things like that. I think nuclear warheads were in there is a thing. Like almost, they pretty much covered everything. Like I'm very impressed with the range. You have everything from like pencil holders to nuclear bombs that you can use as a maid that you can get, that they give you the option of outlining. The only thing is, like, a lot of the items are kind of vague. Like a nuke destroys the whole world and then puts you into a post-apocalyptic setting. That's what it does. So there's no like damage rules or anything for it. It just happens. And a lot of the stuff in here is really, really vague. Butlers, again, they're kind of like the headmaids, but you can throw them in as well. It's just another extra NPC to mess around with. That's what it seems like a lot of the expansions kind of add. A lot of like extra NPC rules and stuff. Yeah, my thoughts on this game are just outside of the mechanics. It's good. Yeah, I wasn't sure I was gonna end up doing this review, because actually I played this game a couple days ago, and I was just gonna jump straight into like right after. I'm like, all right, I play tested it, let's do it. Like I can do the review. I've played it, we're good to go. But I couldn't, because I didn't know how I felt about it. Like I played it, and everyone had fun. I want to say a lot of people weren't really sure what they were signing up for, because again, I did find it through Reddit, so thank you, people who played with me. I did let them know why and what they were signing up for, so this wasn't, I didn't jump this on them. We planned it out a few days in ahead. Ultimately, it's fun. If you like anime, obviously you'll like this game. You really have to enjoy roleplay because it's very open in what actions you can take. So I'm always, I'm always down for extra. Anything that gives you extra roleplay practice is really important because so many people get caught up in just the combat and things. They forget their roleplay. They forget they can talk to people and convince people of things. So any game that lets me kind of explore options with like open-ended kind of situations, I'm usually in favor for. It is going to be a one-shot type of game. It's something that you should be jokingly playing this with your friends. I don't think anyone should sit down and play a like serious scenario of Maid. If you are, I think you're doing it incorrectly. You can be competitive and you can try and mess each other up and play as hard as you want while you're playing, but I don't think you should set out and be like, all right, I don't think you should come at it the same mentality of like running through Curse of Strahd book in terms of just, I'm going to sit down, we're going to do this hardcore Maid campaign. It's just don't. Like I said, it's not going to work out. It's not going to be fun. It is meant to be silly. The writers put in the beginning of the book, this game is meant to be a silly RPG. I'd like to do more reviews on the future for things by that Aaron Clooney does and translates. I know, like I said at the beginning, and I want to say it again. There's a Golden Sky Stories Kickstarter right now, which is it's a non-combat RPG from Japan where you play as like spirits who help out like regular civilians with their everyday problems. Really neat stuff that wouldn't happen if it wasn't for him. Like that's something you would never see like in a Western RPG that comes out. So I think it's important to support him, support the things that Starline Publishing is doing, support their Kickstarters. These are really interesting books that are coming over. Even if you're not a collector, I think the Maid book is like $25. It's not expensive, and it's technically 3 books, so I'd say that's a pretty good deal. It's a great book to have. It's one of those, maybe you'll bust it out on a rainy day. I know a lot of people who play this have probably just kept it on their shelf, so hopefully this will be enough to, if not convince you to play it, at least know, what is sitting on your shelf. Because I think a lot of people, like myself, have had it sitting there as a joke, which it is supposed to be a joke, but not to be laughed at because it's on your shelf, because it's supposed to be a silly game to play with your friends. And I think that about sums up Maid. So keep those books coming over from Japan, Aaron. I think you're doing a great job, and your work is definitely worth it. Absolutely 100%. But I'm pretty sure you already knew that. But that about wraps it up for Maid. If there are any other questions, send them to me on Twitter, Facebook, metamagic@gmail.com. I'd be happy to answer them as like a bonus episode. I don't mind doing that at all. Make sure to rate, like, subscribe, all the above on whatever podcast app you use, which I should be on pretty much all of them at this point. And, if you see me tweeting, go ahead and retweet this episode. Just get it out there. I don't have any advertising or anything like that, so word of mouth is always the best. And as always, thanks for listening.